what the advice you'd give to people if they want to try and make it?
These days, you need to have a particularly thick skin.
Because of social media.
Largely because of social media. Yeah, I mean, you don't lead a regular life really. I mean, you have to. You know, if one of the other papers has a story that drops at 10:30 at night, you only become aware of it at 10:30, then you have to play catch up. I think every Fleet Street journalist does probably go through that. You know, at some point we might get a call here, we might have to go onto the supplement, and it does actually feel like a big thing. It's almost like a little rite of passage. Ash throws the odd curveball in, and he likes to keep the panellists on their toes, which is absolutely how it should be. I think it's brilliant that football fans can express their opinions, however wild, on a platform that can be put out there, that everybody can see. I'd say England at a tournament is probably the most intense work that we do. With England, like every minor groin strain picked up by a player suddenly becomes a back-page story. They'd gone to a McDonald's to get away from the original bombs that had gone off. McDonald's literally about 50 yards from the entrance to the south of France, and a suicide bomber had blown himself up in the crowd outside McDonald's.
Hey guys, welcome to Garage Football. It's a very special episode for us today. We're joined by Dom Fifield. He's the London football correspondent for The Guardian and a regular on the Sunday supplement. Well, Dom, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Cheers, Dom.
Just wanted to start off by asking, like, what's your background? Like, where are you from?
I was born in South Africa, but I've lived in South London since I was about 2 or 3 years old, and a stone's throw from Selhurst Park. And my mum still lives down that way, so
Okay.
I've had no choice in the football team I support, surrounded by all these other shirts. Slightly disconcerting.
Need to get a Palace one, I think.
There you go. So yeah, that was. I grew up in South London in Crystal Palace and South Norwood, and and still go regular visits to Selhurst Park, obviously these days.
Oh, awesome. So did you always want to be a journalist?
I wanted to captain England at cricket, but that didn't. No, I did an undergraduate degree, which wasn't vocational in the slightest. History and French or something. It was just like not going to get you a job in unless you want to go into teaching.
Yeah.
Didn't really know what I wanted to do at the time, and fired off a load of sort of optimistic work experience applications in the summer of 1997. One of which happened to be to Crystal Palace Football Club because it was on my doorstep.
Yeah.
That was a hard job, I suppose, wasn't it?
Well, the weird thing was, it just happened that letter dropped the day that the programme editor at the club announced that he was going to go to Australia for 6 weeks or something. So they left them without a programme editor, and the next thing I knew, I was getting a phone call saying, would you mind coming in and editing the programme for free, I should add, for 6 weeks. And at the end of that stint, it was Palace in the Premier League at the time, one of the Palace's rare outings in the Premier League, and a bit of a chaotic season which started with Steve Coppell in charge and ended up with Attilio Lombardo and Ron Nodes taking the team.
All right.
And getting relegated pretty disastrously. But they took me on and they asked me to stay on for the rest of that season. They did pay me for the second half of the season, so to speak. And that sort of gave me an insight into A, working in a football club, but also B, being around a press box on a match day and press conferences down at the training ground, and also just writing about football. And on the back of that, I decided to try and break into journalism. It took another year in academia. I had to go off and do a postgrad diploma at the City University in London in newspaper journalism. But on the back of that year-long course, I was lucky enough to get a placement on The Guardian, and 20 years on, I'm still there.
So that gave you the platform to
absolutely
move into that.
I do. I mean, it was. There are actually a lot of jobs advertised these days within football clubs for club reporters, club journalists. Not all of them are paid. A couple of them
No.
have been highlighted on social media as being, it's a bit cheeky to ask someone to work full time and not pay them any money. Obviously, that's wrong.
I thought the follow was banned, all the unpaid.
Well,
internships
I think
ways around it.
That's what's been highlighted. I think that maybe they term it slightly different, as in
More expenses paid.
exactly.
Yeah.
But the experience it gave me doing that job was invaluable. Definitely. I mean, I didn't have a clue. I genuinely didn't have a clue what I wanted to do, and that sort of shaped it. Yeah, that sort of gave me the sort of love for writing about football.
Sometimes you need that kickstart anyway.
Absolutely.
You know, it's the bigger picture, isn't it? Some people can look at it as cheeky, but you've obviously developed it and taken it further.
It's what you learn as well.
And these days, if you're these days, it's all about social media as well within those clubs. So I mean, you're building a following by doing those jobs as well, and that will open doors and that will open opportunities for you.
Yeah, but just for our followers on the channel, you've mentioned it before, but who's your team?
Right. No, very much Crystal Palace. My young son is now subjected to them as well. I think I went the first game in the mid-80s. Ian Wright scored.
Yeah.
Ian
Hero
Wright.
or villain?
Hero. He's always been a hero of mine. There was a bad period of a few years in the early 90s, early to mid 90s, where I struggled with him. But yeah, he was one of the best I ever saw at Palace. I mean, it's always going to be Palace, and the fact that my mother, who never liked football at all, my parents didn't care about football, even though we lived so close to a stadium. She now has had a season ticket at Selhurst since Simon Jordan was chairman, so it would have been about 2000. And she now takes her husband down to Selhurst, and they suffer like the rest of us with the dismal home form and the shocking results. But yeah, it's in your blood, isn't it?
It's in your blood. You can't change it.
Absolutely.
You know, could be worse. Could be an Arsenal fan.
Not having will.
Which I am, unfortunately.
So I wanted to ask Dom, like, what did you learn when you first started working at Palace and even at the Guardian as well? What did you learn as a young sort of journalist that really helped you shape your career?
Well, with the Guardian, it was a bit of a baptism of fire in many ways. I spent a year, 99 to 2000, working out of the office, which was in Farringdon Road at the time, subbing, writing, page layout even, which was a great grounding, again, to sort of see how the newspaper works, see how a newspaper gets produced every day, how this effectively a book is produced every single day, and sometimes, reproduced for later editions after 10:30 at night. That was incredible, and I think it is important that every young reporter spends, if they want to work for a newspaper, they have to understand the sort of mechanisms and how
the foundations
works. Yeah. Absolutely, you need to have an idea of it all. But in terms of the reporting job, I had a head of sport at the time who wasn't afraid to sort of throw me at the deep end. He asked me to pack up my stuff. I was living in Clapham at the time. Pack up my stuff and move to Newcastle and cover Newcastle under Bobby Robson, Sunderland under Peter Reid, and Middlesbrough under Brian Robson and Terry Venables that season. Just go and do it. Get in your car, drive up there, find somewhere to live, do the job. When I look back, I was so wet behind the ears. Some of the things that I did that season and some of the things I expected to do, and obviously couldn't get no chance of doing, like interviewing all these people one-on-one.
It's a plot on enthusiasm. I
Yeah,
suppose.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's sink or swim. You have to give it a go. And after a year doing that, the same head of sport had a vacancy that came up on Merseyside. And this was towards the end of the season that Julio was winning 3.
2001.
2001, three cup competitions, and their Merseyside reporter decided to join Everton in a head of comms capacity. So they moved me down. They said, go and find, they gave me a day to find somewhere to live in Liverpool. And I remember buying the A to Z of Liverpool in the old days, as before Google Maps. They literally bought the A to Z. Looked at the front page and I don't know the city, but Dingle, that sounds nice. Let's go and have a look for a place there. And I'd never been more terrified in my life. But, I mean, it was so much. Again, it was a great place to. It's a great place to live, and what clubs to cover. Amazing clubs, as in the North East.
And an era as well, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, we had. I was there for 6 years. And we had Benitez winning the Champions League in Istanbul, getting to the Athens final 2 years later.
Everton getting in the top four.
Everton, yeah, absolutely. They finished fourth. Champions League qualifiers under David Moyes in a season where everybody thought they would probably struggle and go down. They were one of the favourites to get relegated that season. They finished fourth, which is astonishing. Steven Gerrard scoring that. Sorry to bring this up, the West Ham game.
Yeah.
I mean, there's incredible occasions and so much happening around the time, and so 6 years there. Again, baptism of fire. You had to survive. You had to find a way of
sink or swim, isn't it? In the journalism world,
yeah.
You've got
and then down to London in 2007. It's a small matter of going to cover Jose Mourinho and Chelsea, and I saw Mourinho off after 2 months. He was gone by the September of that year.
I suppose part of swimming, if you like, is being able to relocate. You have to be flexible, and you've had to probably make some sacrifices from that perspective.
I mean, that was a time in my life when I could do that.
Yeah.
More readily. And it was daunting. It took some convincing to make all these moves, but actually the head of sport who was telling me to do this was proved spot on each time, and in fairness his judgment was, I hope his judgment, I hope he looks back and thinks he made the right choices, but I think I did. I'm glad I did them, and I have had wonderful memories of Newcastle and the North East, Sunderland, brilliant memories of Liverpool, and London's been like coming home.
For young aspiring journalists, if you like, for sports journalism, what do they need to have? What the advice you'd give to people if they want to try and make it?
You need to be persistent. Obviously, you need to be inquisitive. You need to want to get to the root of stories and get under the skin of football clubs and get to the heart of the issues. These days, you need to have a particularly thick skin.
Because of social media.
Largely because of social media. Yeah, I mean, when I started out 20 years back, if you get letters of complaint. Some of them are handwritten letters of complaint. Some of them painstakingly typed out, and people would do that, but it's far easier now just to log on to Twitter and tell people what you think of them and their copy, and also they pull you up on mistakes much quicker than they used to, which is a good thing, and it keeps you on your toes, and you know when you're making too many little errors because these guys, your followers out there, or the supporters of the clubs you're writing about, they come for you and make sure that you know about it.
So there's no room for complacency. You just got to be on top of your game, otherwise you'll.
Yeah, and you have to accept that it's 24/7. It doesn't. The hours are actually irregular. You can be furiously busy for long periods and then have lulls, but you don't know when they're coming because obviously it's a news generated business. So yeah, that tests you. That means you don't lead a regular life really. I mean, you have to. If one of the other papers has a story that drops at 10:30 at night, you only become aware of it at 10:30. Then you have to play catch up. If you haven't got it, you have to. If it's that good a story, you have to be working through midnight to make sure that your paper, the last editions of your paper, and the website have that story as well.
You have to be prepared to work 24/7.
You're never off the clock.
No, there's a lot of sacrifice. But look, don't get me wrong.
You wouldn't change it.
It's not a real job, is it? It's watching football and writing about football, and I feel hugely privileged and honoured to have been given the opportunity to do that, and to still be doing that after 20 years.
That's awesome. So obviously you're a regular on the Sunday supplement on Sky Sports. What's it like being filmed and talking about football with your fellow peers?
I remember the first time Ash rang up and asked. I mean, Ash, you wouldn't mind me saying, is a fellow Palace fan. We sort of shared Palace's trials and tribulations for years. And as I sort of became more established, I think every Fleet Street journalist has probably go through that. You know, at some point we might get a call here. We might have to go onto the supplement, and it does actually feel like a big thing. It's almost like a little rite of passage to be asked to go.
It's been going for so long. Even Jimmy Hill was hosting it.
Hill, yeah, absolutely. And Brian will know obviously before Ash, but it was a huge honour to be asked. The first time they sort of had me on with, I think, Andy Dunn, Sean Custis, as a sort of experienced panel to work with. I remember the first question that I ever fielded on it was about the Champions League final the night before. Carlo Ancelotti had won the Champions League final. I think they beat Atletico Madrid, maybe it was that one. Real Madrid played Atletico. And I'd watched it, which I'm glad I had, because I would have otherwise. And look, it's nerve-wracking, but it's great fun. And I never thought I would enjoy something as much as every appearance on that. Ash throws the odd curveball in, and he likes to keep the panellists on their toes, which is absolutely how it should be. But he's very, very slick. He knows his stuff. Obviously, it must be weird for him because he must know that quite a lot of the time he's the best journalist around that table. He's the best reporter out of the lot of us. He probably knows more than a lot of us on some of the questions he asks us. But he is the presenter. He's not the man who's maybe written about it that morning, and it might be in the papers that he's actually got on his desk. So nothing but admiration for him. But it's a great show, and one of the weird things about this job is you automatically become good friends with people on rival newspapers, because those are the guys you're hanging around with all the time. You know, the Guardian might send 3 people to big games, but generally speaking, I'm on my own at matches as the Guardian. So I'm sort of mixing with, my colleagues, my peers on other papers all the time, and they become your big mates, your big pals. And so to be sitting around a table talking about football, whether there are cameras there or not, as you guys know, is with your mates is what you want to do.
Great. Yeah, you forget the cameras there most of the time.
I've
Well,
never got that far.
I don't know about Sky.
I'm always sitting there
conscious, are you?
don't drop, don't make a mess of this. Just make sure your answer is safe and correct, and what you mean to say.
But is there pressure in that though? Because you said about followers of the stuff you write. I mean, Sunday Supplement has been going for years, and that's got a big following.
Yeah.
Is there a real pressure there to make sure you say everything correctly?
There's a bit of a ritual that happens after an episode.
Okay.
Where we're walking out the Sky studio building in Isleworth and to our cars, whatever. And it's sort of almost a test to see who looks at their phone first, to see the reaction on social media. Yeah. And you're sort of braced for the burn of people either disagreeing with what you said, which is again absolutely fair enough, or people just pointing out how ridiculous you look or how daft you sound or whatever. I mean, that must happen. It makes you think a program on mainstream TV that's getting in 10 million viewers or whatever. What do those guys go through?
It's natural to have that.
It's. I mean, I've sat in the car on the way back from there. If I'm getting a lift, say, to a stadium for an early afternoon game, and I've sort of plucked up the courage and had a look. Oh dear God, I won't be watching this episode back ever. But for all that, it's brilliant fun. It is talking football with your mates. The croissants are real.
Yeah,
I was going to ask that. Are they real or not?
They're all real. They're all real. One of my, again, I think it was my second or third appearance. I was on with a lad who I won't name, and we never touched the croissant. Occasionally they come in and like break them up a bit in the breaks, so that you look as if you've been tucking in. But this lad, I think he was on about the second or third time we've been on as well, and he tucked into a pastry. And as it was counting down, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to go back in, I looked at him and he had it all over his shoulder. He literally had bits on his mouth and it was like, get rid. He was going into the thing frantically, brushing
it's like Paul Merson on Soccer Saturday.
But you guys practice before it goes live? Is there like a rehearsal before?
No.
It's just straight in,
straight in, yeah. And it's filmed as live.
Yeah.
Do you have an itinerary though of what you're going to be? Do you know what you're actually going to be talking about?
Well, weirdly, Ash puts it on social media. He puts his Instagram. That's all we get. But we don't get any more than that. And sometimes we have to prompt him to actually tell us, can we see that picture that you put out on social media, please? Because we've left our phones in the green room. But again, I think that's just him keeping us on our toes. And I think he likes it to be natural. He doesn't want it to look rehearsed and staged. I think he has confidence in the people that he gets on to know about the subjects he's going to talk about, and he just wants them to express either their opinion or what they know, facts on an issue, but it is live. I mean, there's not much room for error on that.
Do you enjoy it when, I particularly like it when Sean Custis and Henry Winter are on, because them two just clash so much.
Yeah.
Do you find it funny? Do you enjoy it where, like, say a couple of your peers who you go on with, they really disagree over something, or do you just like, this is what it'd be like down the pub with no cameras?
You enjoy seeing them disagree. Yeah, I'd suggest that if those guys, if you took a selection of the regulars on that and put them in a pub situation talking about football, some of the disagreements would be more vehement, they'd be more heartfelt than possibly they are in front of the Sky cameras. And it's almost like the Henry Sean thing's almost become a bit of a that you expect that you'd be disappointed if they didn't clash now.
You expect it. It's like Carragher and Neville.
They could make it. I mean, when they're out together. I mean, Sean's obviously now head of sport at the Sun and not out on the road anymore, so we don't see very much of him out on the road. But when he was for years, he and Henry seemed to get on like a house on fire. Normally, I think a lot of it is it's for dramatic effect.
Makes great
not saying they don't believe what they're saying. I mean, they're just disagreeing and fighting their corners, but
gives them a license.
Absolutely. But there is an element of that. You do. I'm one of the journalists who would watch the show every week. I mean, I watch it every week. I find it. I'm interested to know what people think on certain issues. I'm just that intrigues me to know what the lad at the Telegraph might think on something on say a Chelsea issue or the lad at the Mail or whatever. And I think the last few years they've tried to bring in a new blood onto the show as well, new people. I think that's shaken it up in a really positive way as well. It's always a good watch in my opinion. I know some of the fans out there disagree, but I just enjoy it. I think it's a well put together show. It's very well hosted, and it does provide. It provides a good insight into what the Sunday papers are doing. Sometimes I wonder whether it could branch out a bit to covering some of the stories that maybe have made the papers at the end of the week. So maybe on the Friday and the Saturday, because I think that daily newspapers and Sunday newspapers, although the Guardian and Observer have long since merged together with a similar staff, they're still different entities in a lot of ways, and the type of story they go for is different. So But that's up to the Sunday Supplement guys. I think there are plenty of other shows out there as well which will discuss things during the week as well. So you've got 24-hour news channels on Sky. You've got 24-hour radio channels now talking about news, a lot of which is generated by newspapers still.
Yeah. And I just wanted to ask about the Sunday Supplement, because like they have the regular guys on. They've had editors on before, and not just sports editors. They had a Legends special on earlier this season with Paddy Barclay, Ian McGarry, Paul McCarthy. Do you think with the rise of fan TV channels, you will have an episode where it's just guys from fan channels?
That'll be up to Ash and the editorial department. The thing about the Sunday Supplement is it's a newspaper show. It's a show for people in the newspaper industry. Now, look, I don't know whether that will change as more newspapers become web-first operations, but I still think at the moment it's retained its print press. I mean, the very fact that he picks up the newspapers at the beginning of the show and halfway through the show and runs down the back pages. It's about newspapers. It's always been about newspapers.
It's all relevant.
When it was on the back page through to the Sunday Supplement these days. And if they maintain that policy, if it's about newspapers, then I don't see how a fan TV element would come into it, because these are newspaper journalists expressing what's happening in the industry.
No, exactly. On that note, quickly, what's your view on fan TV channels? So it's quite popular now. You've got Arsenal fan TV, etc. Ball Street,
West Ham fan TV.
Yeah, the list goes on.
I think it's brilliant that football fans can express their opinions, however wild, on a platform that can be put out there, that everybody can see. We were talking before, and I mean, I remember the days where fan opinions were basically encapsulated in a monthly fanzine, physical hard copy that you picked up a game for £1, and that was the extent of it. Some of those still exist. I mean, only £1 at Stamford Bridge is still brilliant. The fanzine they have down there. That's and you get the 5-year plans just started up again at Palace, but the fact that you've got YouTube channels offering this platform to supporters cannot be anything but a good thing. It's a fantastic. Well, it's just an opportunity for them to express themselves. I'm not sure football clubs will like it particularly, because a lot, inevitably, if your team's just got beat and emotions are running high, then some of the, as we've seen with the Arsenal fans, I mean, there's expressions that it can be quite rabid on there, can't it?
Well, you could argue that some of these fan channels, like Arsenal Fan TV, they have an influence in the club. I mean, Wenger leaving, for example, everything, it was so popular, Arsenal Fan TV, could it have, it's giving fans a voice.
They must be aware of it.
They will be aware of it. They will be aware. I mean, I'd like to think that they're not. Generally speaking, the loudest are generally the minority.
Yeah.
Even on the social media field, I mean, if you get criticised in social media, fingers crossed, it's usually only a few people. They're the ones that are so worked up, they're going to make those complaints loudest. Now, with Arsenal Fan TV, with all of the fan TVs, they tap into and they like that sort of feverish sense of, it's discussed post match when they get beaten and when they've lost a game, or when there's an issue like Wenger's sort of the stagnation of Wenger's tenure. So it'll be the loudest voices, the dissenting voices that are attracted to that, and clubs will have to strike a balance between the silent majority and the louder minority. But they will be aware of it, of course they will be, and if supporters mount a protest in the stadium, they're aware of it. So if they're seeing this especially if they're seeing this from the States and they're seeing it on YouTube,
they've got leaders, haven't they? That's probably how some people are looking at it. When you've got banners and you've got all these things which I disagree with, You know, and you've got these catalysts that are saying put a banner up.
Yeah.
You know, is that influencing a lot of people?
It is. You know? Fan culture's always been there, hasn't it? I mean, that is the point. It's always, this is just another means for it to express itself, and it does express itself, and it expresses itself pretty persuasively through these YouTube channels and on social media. It's just another thing that football clubs and football and mainstream media have to look at and work out quite, you know, how much do we take this into account when we're assessing the mood at a club. I'll tell you an interesting one on that, and I hadn't experienced this really, I don't think ever, since covering Chelsea in 2007, but last season the split between people pro Maurizio Sarri and people anti Maurizio Sarri, and I think it's fair to say that the anti faction were largely match-going supporters, and the pro faction were quite often based nowhere near Chelsea. May not have gone to live games, but some of them a lot of them were based abroad, and they sort of tapped into the cult of Sarri, who'd done such a wonderful job at Napoli. But it was a very distinct split, and you know, some of the stuff that was chanted at, say, the Manchester United game, the Cardiff game, within the stadium it was poison. I mean, it was poison raining down on the manager, and I do believe that influenced Chelsea's apathy towards keeping him at the end of the season, because they'd never seen an open revolt like that against someone that was there on a long-term contract. Yeah, they'd had it from Rafa Benitez when he was there.
He was only
interim. He was there. He came in November, I think, and left in May the following year. But he was only ever a temporary appointment, and this was Sarri. This was the great hope. This was the man who was going to bring attacking flair football. And the people going to the games were chanting what we know they were chanting. And I hadn't seen that before, but there is an example of you know, a loud dissent influencing a football club. I think that was probably more widespread than, you know, the type of anguish you get expressed after a 1-0 defeat to whoever at the London Stadium or the Emirates. But, you know, if Arsenal Fan TV is tapping into a general sense of discontent, as it has been, certainly did under the Wenger tail under the Wenger era, then yeah, people will stand up and take notice.
Absolutely, and I think the main thing is, just like our channel, really, it's just to give fans a voice, and the everyday person can discuss.
Football,
just like down the pub, if you like, but on camera.
It's brilliant. How can that be a bad thing? It's only good.
And especially those who go every game, like Robbie and DT, a lot of the AFCB guys, they might know more than some journalists, because some journalists might not go to every Arsenal game, for example.
Yeah.
And they're watching one every 3 games or whatever. If you're going to every game, I go every West Ham home game, I might know more watching it live than some journalists who want to see it all the time.
Yeah, if you're a supporter of your club, you make it your business to know everything about your club, don't you? I mean, I'd like to think that if you've got a Chelsea correspondent or a West Ham correspondent or whatever, Arsenal correspondent, those guys are all over those clubs as well.
Of course, absolutely.
You'd expect.
But yeah, you're right. If you're sort of covering London football and you're Stamford Bridge one week, you're at White Hart Lane the next, or the Valley the week after that, then you're only going to do things on a certain sort of superficial level. You want to try and get under the skin of the clubs.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you've covered England at a number of tournaments. Some good, like the World Cup last year.
One good.
Most of them bad, like Euro 2000 was pretty poor. I mean, what's it like covering the national team?
Well, I started covering in 2007, so the tail end of Steve McLaren's miserable spell in charge. The Croatia game forever seared on our memories.
Wally with the Brolly.
Dear me. I'd say England at a tournament, it's probably the most intense work that we do. Always has been. It still is now. I think perhaps when I started, it was slightly more intense still. And South Africa in particular was a stressful tournament. You have to be over everything. With England, like every minor groin strain picked up by a player suddenly becomes a back page story, and you make it your mission to find this stuff out and to get it on the back page, and that can be that can be draining when you know at a tournament for if it's going well for 6 weeks, if not like the Euros in 2016, you're there for blink of an eye, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Brazil in 2014 as well, and there's a marked difference between covering England until they go out and then covering the rest of the tournament, which suddenly becomes so much more fun.
Yeah.
And it's you're writing about things that maybe aren't maybe not quite as mundane as Kieran Trippier's got a sore toe. Yeah. That said, the whole experience in Russia.
Yeah.
The only time I've covered England right the way to the end of the tournament by one day, I mean, third, fourth place playoff, was by far and away the best that I've experienced. It was brilliant, and it was so nice to have positive things to write about England's performances and the mood around the place and the impact that Southgate had made. It was just fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I mean, I still think of all the tournaments I did, the first one I did, 2002 in Korea, was probably my favourite. And I wasn't covering England; it was just covering teams in sort of Busan and Ulsan and a bit of Seoul.
The squad that should have done well.
Ultimately. They should have done well. Yeah. I remember watching, on the box ahead of the game against Brazil, England-Brazil. But yeah, look, we've got a successful England team now. We've got a team that we can get behind and enjoy watching.
Definitely, but on that though, so you had mentioned that sometimes certain games can be a little bit mundane in terms of what you can report. How do you keep yourself motivated?
It's not the game so much. It's more the sort of the fact that if so and so turns up 15 minutes late for training, it's suddenly an issue, as opposed to if it was a club team, it wouldn't really make sense. But it's because of the focus so much on it. I mean, the whole of the sporting media seems to focus on England at a major tournament in this country. You get that people look at that and think that's them waiting for the team to fail. It really isn't. Of all the people that cover England, the people that really want them to do well are the journalists who have to sit through the worst times. I mean, there's nothing worse. Going out in 2014, going out in Bloemfontein in 2010 for that matter. Oh my God.
What, against Germany?
Yeah, 4-1, and Iceland as well in 2016. It was just, these are miserable moments. They're not nice things to cover. They're interesting because it's a size. It feels like a seismic moment every time England goes out. But you're desperate for them to do well, and which is why the mood was so brilliant in Russia. And why everybody was so desperate for them to just to hold on against Croatia in the semi-final. There is a lot more focus on England at the tournament. That's just the reality of it, because the whole you sort of become aware of the nation going mad in your absence, and you see the box park pictures of everybody chucking their pints up in the air.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, they are actually getting properly behind these guys now, and you desperately want them to do well. England always finds a way to slip at the last, but I still think what Southgate's done has been brilliant, and what the team is developing into is brilliant, and it's a great time to cover it.
Agree.
Certainly progress there, isn't there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Look at the young players we're bringing through; it's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned 2002 there. That was part of the Golden Generation team. Euro 2004 and the World Cup 2006 as well. Got to 3 quarterfinals. Why Why do you think those squads never got to a semi or a final?
Well, they weren't very good at penalty shootouts. It always we found a way each time. The team found a way, contrived to find a way to, if not implode, maybe to sustain self-inflicted injuries. Whether that be sort of sending off Wayne Rooney sending off. Go back to '98, Beckham sending off. Semi-fit players. I mean, some of my colleagues have banged the drum quite loudly about the fact that we need a mid-season break to make sure that the national team is fresh come summer in a major tournament. And I can see there's a logic to that. I don't agree with it because I love my domestic football and I want to be watching a constant drip feed of Premier League, Championship football, whatever. But that is probably one reason. It's an incredibly draining season. Yeah. It's probably the most physically demanding divisional league out there, and so it shouldn't be a massive surprise that when they get to the summer finals and we're asking them to suddenly go again, that they're blunted, that they're knackered basically. And I think Southgate, one of the reasons they did so well last time was that Southgate struck upon a formula in terms of giving people breaks and staggering the link-ups to the national squad after the domestic season, and making sure that he gave them the best chance to be fit and prepared for the tournament. And it's taken a while for England managers to really clock that as possible, or even to be given the leeway to do that. I mean, possibly unfair on his predecessors there. Yeah, but it will happen eventually. Yeah. It will happen eventually. I thought this summer might provide silverware.
I think we all did.
Yeah.
I think it's the first time in years that we actually believed.
Yeah.
But it's exciting now to, England have got, for example, a friendly coming up. It sometimes was an inconvenience.
Yeah.
For most fans.
Well, we're looking to actually go to a game. Like, that's do you know what I mean? Like, whereas before you wouldn't go. Like, if it was like a friendly against some, like Liechtenstein or something, or qualify, you think,
well, that's very shrewd. I mean, we don't often congratulate UEFA for the fixture scheduling or for the demands they place on the international teams, but actually the Nations League and creating those autumn internationals against Croatia and Spain,
really good,
was an excellent idea. Yeah. Really, really good idea. And hopefully, England will qualify for 2020. Their qualifying group is not daunting. There's some nice trips still to be had and some winnable games still to have. But come next summer, where you've got games at the semi-finals and final at Wembley, there's an opportunity there. There's an opportunity.
Just finally on England, like you and the other English journalists, do you guys celebrate an England goal, or are you just so focused on covering what's happened that the emotion goes out of it?
We try and say properly professional. I'll admit that a few didn't go up, not in the way that a fan goes up, as in goes wild and throws a drink in the air, whatever. But there was some punching of the air during the penalty shootout with Colombia. Sweden just felt like a formality. Yeah. They absolutely bossed up.
I said at the time that it felt like a international friendly in like March or something.
There was no drama to that occasion, was there? But Colombia there was, and it felt like a properly big moment. And then there was excitement when Trippier scores against Croatia. There's this latent desire for the national team to do well. Likewise, you could say that I cover my team, and I don't celebrate if Palace score.
But it must test you at times.
Yeah, it has tested me. I remember when we were in the Championship and I was covering Liverpool Palace in a FA Cup replay, and Palace won 2-0 at Anfield. And I was sitting next to the sports editor at the Independent at the time, who was also a big Palace fan, who'd come up from London for the game. And we were under the desk, sort of punching the air like this, but not visibly. You couldn't. I mean, I was surrounded. I was literally as close as I am to you. I was Liverpool fans were there, cursing Emil Heskey. So I mean, it's yeah. You can't be seen to be going berserk, and you're not. You have to remember you're not cheerleaders. You're there to do a job. But inside, my God, when Trippier scored, and it's fantastic. This is brilliant. And of course, that elation is there. It never goes away. We're fans as well.
Yeah.
So.
Is that the downside to your job? Would you say, in the sense where you have to be spot on?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's made me appreciate going to games as a supporter more, because I mean, I had a day where last season in the cup again, when I had a free weekend. And I went as an away fan with my brother and a couple of mates. We went to the Doncaster Palace FA Cup tie. And it was like a proper day out. And people are doing this every weekend, lucky things. And we can't do that. But then, the counterbalance of that is I get to go to games. I get to travel in Europe and watching Champions League or Europa League games or England matches. I'm not paying for them. When you talk to the guys and you realise what people fork out to do this, and you talk to the travelling supporters, you have to feel privileged that you're in this position. You can actually watch these without that incumbents. But I can. It makes you appreciate the games you are there as a supporter more.
But on that, what would you say? It's going to be probably quite a hard question, but what's probably the best game you've covered? Is there one
Istanbul.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, that was properly ridiculous. Liverpool still have that capacity to pull results out from nowhere that you cannot envisage. And that night, I think it was the third man. We had 4 people there, I think, and I was as the Merseyside correspondent. I was the third man. The football correspondent was writing the match report. The chief sports writer at the time was a man called Michael Walker. I think he was covering that game, and he decided, we had a chat pre-match as to what his theme would be of his piece. And this was the game where, from nowhere, Harry Kewell suddenly gets recalled to the Liverpool team for the final, and it's like,
he went off, didn't he? Early.
What's he doing? Yeah. So he said, "I'm going to do Harry Kewell." So I said, "Oh, fair enough. Okay, well, I'll do something on Stephen Gerrard." And then the fourth man was going to do the quotes and ratings. Anyway, so 18 minutes in, Kewell's limping off, and poor Mickey Walker's sitting there thinking, "Oh, what am I going to do?" And he ended up writing a big piece about Milan, which, at half-time when he's filed half of it, is like, Milan, untouchable, incredible, 3-0 up, absolutely bossing this, they're fantastic. I'm sitting there writing about Stephen Gerrard, writing a piece saying, "Oh, this is at half-time, this is the man, this could be this last game. Chelsea hovering in the sidelines, unable to influence the team, it's all going wrong around him. Where does this leave Stephen Gerrard?" 20 minutes in the second half, we've ripped all that up. Mickey's gone complete bottlers AC Milan, and I've got this story that's just dropped in my lap with Gerrard doing what Gerrard did that night.
Last moment,
just unbelievable. And from 3-3 there was only ever going to be one winner.
Yeah,
even with Dudek's heroics, there was only going to be one winner. It was just the most ludicrous game of football ever, and they're the best ones. They're the ones that, on a similar vein, I was the second man, the colour piece writer at Palace Liverpool in early 2014, or May 2014, and had to file my copy at 80 minutes.
Okay. So the Crystanbul one?
Crystanbul, so 3-0 to Liverpool, 3-1, I think Palace pulled one back about 78 minutes. And I filed a piece saying Liverpool's still very much in the title race here, because they would have been clear of City. Goal difference would have probably come into it ultimately, but they would have been clear. 2 points, I think, clear and real chance of winning that title. Fired my copy, and then spent the rest of an evening when I would normally be out in the stands going absolutely berserk with happiness because Palace have clawed back to 3-3. I'm sitting there thinking, oh bloody hell, I'm going to have to rewrite this now completely. My copy is completely blown out the water. And it was the one game I watch every time I watch that now, every time I see those goals now. While I absolutely love watching Dwight Gale score those 2 goals, part of me is sitting there thinking, that really ruined your evening. Utterly ruined your evening.
How long did it take you to rewrite that?
Well, it was an 8 o'clock kick-off on a Monday night. It had to be filed on 90 minutes. It had to be filed, otherwise you miss edition. So it was a case of spending those last 10 minutes after filing the complete version that said that Liverpool were back in the title race. Spending the next 10 minutes, Liverpool have completely imploded. The title's gone. This is it now. And then thankfully, you get once that's gone, edition goes at 10 o'clock. You then get a couple of hours to rewrite, and you can make it readable. Because in that situation, you just had
emotions all over the place.
It was definitely. Just, I mean, yeah. But let's have a look. The first time I got taken to a game when I was on work experience at the Guardian, one of the writers took me to a match, Charlton against Spurs, to show me how a runner's written a night game, a live game where you write everything backwards. You send a big chunk at half time, and you send the last third with about 15, 20 minutes to go, then you send the intro at the last minute. Half time was 1-0 Charlton all over, bossing it completely. So I think 75 minutes he sent his second lot saying Spurs are coming back into this, but it's still 1-0 Charlton, so he's still very much still Charlton. Spurs all over the shop. Spurs scored 4 times in the last 10 minutes, 1-4, 1 away. And
so even with the structure that you've got, I mean, it just goes out the window.
Suddenly you're thinking, well, I've left myself 200 words at the top to encapsulate a complete turnaround of a game. And it was a brilliant one to see how it was done, because poor John Broghin, who was writing it, he didn't get reduced quite to a gibbering wreck, but he was close to it. Every time, I think it was Ginola who was just going berserk. He was just scoring these wonderful goals left, right and centre, and he's sitting there thinking, nothing I've written so far makes sense now. It's all been blown out of the water in the last 10 minutes. But that's just one of the perils of newspaper journalism.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you've been covering games, have you had any funny technology mishaps or anything bad happen to you?
I've seen people drop computers. Obviously, I'm treat all Guardian IT with the old.
Of course, what is anything less?
No, I think I've escaped on that front. Believe me, I'm probably one of the more IT proficient members of the press pack. I've been able to be of use by being able to touch type, which is helpful in post-match press conferences in terms of getting quotes to people and getting sort of passing them around, which has gave me a few brownie points over the years. I even know how to use email. It's great.
Fantastic. But so you mentioned as well, though, obviously best game, Istanbul. What would you say is the sort of highlight of your career so far?
Well, look, it's been brilliant to cover games like that, to go to European Cup finals, to go to World Cup finals, to be in the Maracanã, to watch one of the worst games of football ever, but it was a World Cup final. You can't, you're spending time in Rio at a World Cup and you're sitting, I mean, this is real life. This is.
That's going to be the pinnacle. Yeah,
it's amazing. But in terms of journalism, in terms of what I'm proudest of having written, I was lucky enough to be put on a project just prior to Euro 2016, which took me to Paris and trying to find out a bit about the terrorist attacks that had taken place the previous year. at the Stade de France, and talking to some of the victims of that, talking to the Minister of the Interior, talking to the police, talking about preparations for the tournament, but also, emotionally speaking, talking to some of the guys who were actually there that night when the bombs went off, and they still got the shrapnel wounds in them, and we talked to a man called Acha who whose wife had been seriously injured and still in a wheelchair after what happened. They'd gone to a McDonald's to get away from the original bombs that had gone off. McDonald's literally about 50 yards from the entrance to the Stade de France, and a suicide bomber had blown himself up in the crowd outside McDonald's. And he wanted to talk about it because he felt as if enough hadn't been made of it in France as to the actual people. They felt let down by the government. They felt let down generally by society. They'd been sort of forgotten, particularly given it was a few months before football came back to France, came to Stade de France for the first time for major tournaments in 1998. So we traced back the steps of what he'd done that night and where he'd been, and he sort of showed us. I mean, it was amazing. They hadn't even changed you have like gate H or something up on the, as you go into the ground. There was blooming shrapnel marks in the gate H at the top. Lampposts where he'd been standing, and he just sort of, I hadn't noticed, I had to walk past it 2 or 3 times, and he said, "No, look, come look," and he sort of, there's these massive gashes in this lamppost, and metal lamppost, and you sort of got an idea of quite what they'd gone through, and that was really moving and really a project that wasn't easy, but it was really fulfilling, and we got a wonderful message back from him, from Asher, after publication, where he just sort of said, "God, the English do it really. When they do it, they do it really well, don't they? And make a point of doing things well." And that was really, really fulfilling. And the other one, which gave me a sort of sense of pride, and I hope helped the person involved, was the Stephen Corker interview. Who, when he decided he wanted to talk about his depression, his gambling and drinking addictions, and to sort of offer an insight into why a player who'd won an England cap in 2012 was sort of languishing in the reserves in a championship club, and that again took a lot of time, because you're basically asking somebody to bare their soul. All their demons are out there. Everything's exposed. They feel they're fragile anyway, and I'm thankful to say that on the back of that we became quite good friends and still in touch, and that was, I think he looks back on that with a sense of, hopefully people benefited from me coming out and saying all that stuff.
That's incredibly rewarding to be able to
lucky
do that.
to be in a position where you can do that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing those with us.
Really appreciate it.
So you mentioned Stephen Corker there. I mean, that was, memorable is probably not the right word, but it was certainly very interesting. Must be one of the best interviews you probably ever would have done. Are there any others that stick out in your mind?
I love the interviews. The interviews are probably the favourite aspect of it all. And you can sit down with someone. I've been lucky enough to sit down with Eden Hazard twice when he's at Chelsea, which is brilliant. He's a great value. He knows why you're there. He wants to be interesting. He wants to tell you something. Jose Mourinho, he was the type of person that when you sat down with him to do a one-on-one, he had worked out what he wanted to say, and he was going to make sure he said it whatever happened. So you knew you were going to come away with something of value, which of interest. But look, I can go. I did an interview with Neil Ashton actually when we were the first two to interview Wilfried Zaha for a national newspapers rather. Just prior to his England call up in 2012, which was a controversial interview thanks to some of the furniture on the pieces and some of the quotes, but it was just lovely to meet this kid who was a complete genius, an absolute genius, and he was almost like he knew he was good, and he knew he could get better, and he had no fear whatsoever. He had that wonderful sort of, what have I got to be scared about? I'm as good as anybody out there, and to hear him say all that was brilliant, and I love Worth to bits. I think he's the best player I've ever seen play for Palace, and to have a chance to interview him was I was very lucky. And you could say the same for Wan-Bissaka last season. I mean, going back to Wan-Bissaka's school with him, old school, and seeing the adulation that 200 school kids squealing with delight as he walks into the hall. I mean, that's pretty special moments.
Exactly, you see him uplift people's spirits.
Yeah,
that's so important. Changing subjects a little bit now. Many of your colleagues have written books.
Yeah.
Is it something you're looking to get into?
I don't know whether they have the time. I've done bits and bobs. I had a collaboration with a French author maybe about 10, 11 years back, and we did a book on Wenger and a book on we did Robert Perez's autobiography, and I sort of helped to translate it and edit it into English. But in terms of writing my own, I'd love to. I would, of course. I do think that I've always been very proud, but to hold a newspaper and show something that I've written is a fantastic feeling. To actually have a book and do that would be a different level. Yeah. But
it'd be an interesting read, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'd need to find the time to do something. I don't know what's going to happen.
So obviously you've been a journalist for a number of years now. I mean, one of your peers from a few years ago, Paul McCarthy, he's got his own sort of management PR firm. Do you think you will ever leave the journalism industry and to move into something else?
I guess it depends whether the world of journalism has had enough of me or not. I don't envisage it. No, I mean, but journalism is changing all the time, and that what I started off doing 20 years ago isn't what I do now, and in another 10 years' time, when I won't have paid off a mortgage yet, so I'm still working, and I don't know what journalism will look like then. I just don't know. No one does.
No.
It's developing all over. When I started at The Guardian 20 years back, the internet site, Guardian Unlimited, was in a separate building around the corner, and it had a minute staff, and largely whose job was to copy and paste articles that had been written in the paper and put them online about midnight, so that what was in the paper was reflected online. These days, it's web first. It's web first. It's a website first and a paper, trusted and respected, and a paper that we all love working for, and have loved working for throughout. It carries a good name, but it's a website first, and that just shows the sort of adaptation of journalism over that 20-year period. But it's a shrinking industry, the newspaper industry. That's not all down to me, but when I started working at The Guardian, we sold 400,000 papers a day. I think we're down to under 200,000 now. Yeah. It can't all be because my intros are rubbish. It's because the industry is just shrinking, and it's
just the way of the times now, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's just instant for people to be on the train, get their phone out, and read it first.
And The Guardian, in fairness, The Guardian has been one of the first papers to embrace the whole internet revolution in terms of media. The app is good, is excellent. People can sit there and read The Guardian, and they can read The Guardian, whether it be a live blog or whether it be articles that have been in that morning's paper or going in the following morning's paper. That is the beauty of it, and it has adapted really, really well. but it can't stop. It's got to keep going. It's got to keep finding new ways to stay on top of it all, and which will lead it down different roads in the next 10 years.
Yeah, it's exciting to see. In terms of football agents, do you think they tend to have too much power in today?
In terms of journalism, or in terms of football?
Yeah, football, yeah.
From
your perspective.
You don't like to see large amounts of money disappearing out the game. When you see some of the fees involved for the super agents in particular, over big money transfers, natural reaction is one word. I mean, look at the fees that United are paying here, whether it be on Pogba, Lukaku, whatever.
Just the table of agents fees, not even in the Premier League, even in the Championship, it's insane.
But then the other thing about it is that is how the game works. That is how the game evolves and how the game operates. It may not be right, but it just is the reality. Deregulation of agents and representatives and intermediaries. It could go the other way next and try and get them all regulated again. You never know. It's just the game doesn't seem to know how to cope with that phenomenon.
No.
The authorities don't know how to control it. Maybe the authorities don't want to control it. I don't know. There are some brilliant agents out there, absolutely brilliant agents who look after their clients, who deal with all aspects of their lives. And some footballers, plenty of footballers are big kids, kids who suddenly having these huge figures thrown at them, massive money. There's no reason why should they know how to cope with all that stuff? So you employ people who are specialised in that subject to do that, and that's what good agents do. Even relative terms, go to League Two, given the size of mortgages and the size of people's earnings, again you need people to help it and to manage it.
Yeah.
But inevitably in every industry, whether it be football agents, journalism, YouTubers, there are dodgy people out there that will try and make money out of it and try and exploit it. The hope is there are more better than bad, but I know plenty of really good agents who I'd trust to do the best for their clients, and a lot of those agents might work for a club and do the best for those clubs as well. So,
absolutely.
So, in terms of the journalism industry, do you think it's harder for younger journalists now who are entering the industry?
I think it's harder for young journalists to enter the industry if they're thinking along the lines of I want to work for a newspaper, I just want to do this, I just want to do that, I want to be a bit, when they don't think outside the box, when they're not willing to adapt and appreciate the changes that have been happening. The traditional routes into newspaper journalism I don't think exist to the same extent now. Courses, academic courses might get you a placement, but they might not get you a well-paid placement that will make it worthwhile. Local journalism isn't what it was. It's been shrunk down. It's been dumbed down to a large extent.
Yeah.
So you can't sort of go and spend 5 years on a local paper and develop a contacts book and a reputation and then get picked up by a national as easily now as you could do 20 years back. That said, there are more journalists, I imagine, now than ever before on the back of what the internet offers. So the opportunities are still there, but it's instead of saying, I want to be a newspaper journalist, you want to be a journalist, you want to be someone who is probably more web proficient than paper proficient, who has other skills, whether they be video journalism, whether they be audio, broadcast, this. If you've got those skills, I still think you'll find a route in. It's the opportunities are there. It's just a matter of proving the quality and showing that willingness and eagerness to sort of adapt and maybe not don't know, maybe not sort of target specifics so much. I remember coming in, I just wanted to be a sports journalist, but the best thing that ever happened when I was learning was being told, no, you're not going to do the sports journalism module. You're going to learn how to write a news story. Learn a news story, how to write that.
It's discipline, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like going to court, going to local courts and stuff.
That and coroner's courts and courts. That is everything. You can do that. If you can do that, you can adapt those skills to any field of journalism. You've got to write a good news story. You've got to recognise where the story is, where the angle is, and you can apply that to any industry, any field of the industry, and you'll do well.
It's how committed you are as well, and consistent as well.
I know it's difficult. I know it's horrific when you don't earn money.
Of course.
And you're being asked to work hard to get this in, because they don't fall in your lap. Stories you have to work for it. But the hope is that that something goes your way, and you just need that toe in the door, and then if you've got the qualities, if you've got the skills, you can excel.
Absolutely.
Obviously, we've just been talking about the changes in the journalism industry with the rise of the internet and social media and so on. What do you think will happen to the industry in the next, say, 5-10 years?
We've got to find a way of making money from the internet. Advertising revenues seem to be going down all the time. People have tried paywalls. Some have worked, some haven't. Guardian's tried a donation scheme, which has done brilliantly initially. Be interested to see whether that's still got the same effect in a couple of years' time. It's got to find a way. But then to be fair, we've probably been saying that for about 5 years, 10 years now, trying to monetize the internet to make it worthwhile. I think it's difficult to do it when I don't want to slaughter the BBC, but when the BBC exists and can put everything out on its website effectively for free, I think it's difficult then for newspaper websites or news websites to try and charge people. So they've got to offer something different. They've got to offer something that the BBC can't offer. That isn't just a sort of rundown of the day's stories or events. So it's got to offer exclusive stories, like things that you can only get there, that you get there first there. It's got to offer analysis that is beyond compare. Interesting features that are different. They're not sort of mirrored elsewhere. It's just got to attract people in and convince them to subscribe to, whether it's a pay site or not. You just got to find a way of luring people to you. But that's something that the industry's been struggling with for a long time. And it's difficult for newspapers as well, because you can't, by definition, you're there to find and uncover and report news. That is the point. So you can't then have a staff that's completely dedicated to writing analysis features, because what they're analysing, they haven't got any news to analyse. They need to generate news and find that news first. So it's really, really difficult. But I can't see it going. I can't see newspapers suddenly
vanishing. Yeah,
they won't vanish. They won't vanish. The names will never vanish. I hope that they stay in hard copy form for as long as possible, because picking up that newspaper and filling the paper and just reading it is something special. And as I said, going back to the beginning, they do that every single day. It's a book they're producing every single day. It's astonishing when you think about it.
But I think trends always they come full circle, don't they? You could talk about any industry, like music, for example.
Yeah.
Everything's digital. You can download, or you've got Spotify streaming. But now you're going back to people want vinyl.
Yeah.
People, do you know what I mean? So it's going to be.
CDs will come back soon.
You know. But I think there's always going to be a call for.
I'd like to think
newspapers.
so. Look, I'm not the right person really to ask on that because I'm in my 40s. I think the key will be what teenagers these days think about it, or what early 20s people in their early 20s think about it, and whether they have that affinity to newspapers still. And if you go, 5-10 years into the future, will my children have the same affinity to newspapers that I have? I don't think they're not in the same way. They can't have it in the same way because they're not as prevalent as they were. People aren't as reliant upon them in physical form as they used to be. But the names, the names will be maintained. The reputations hopefully will be maintained. And people will know that originally, when they look at their websites in 2055, the Guardian website will still be there, or whatever it is in that. God knows what it could be then. Some virtual reality website.
Yeah.
But it was a newspaper once, and it was something you actually held in your hand and read like a book.
The Guardian website, like Daily Mail, like Mail Online, they've got good websites. Do you think, though, that other newspaper companies, media companies, have made the most of what the internet can offer?
I don't think any of them's made the most of it because nobody's made money out of it properly. I know the Mail does well from its sort of the band of stories on its front pages down the right-hand side. People click on that. Have they made money in advertising? I don't know. You'd have to ask them. These days, you have to have a good website to be, respected or to be acknowledged. Really, you have to. It has to be top quality website or an app or whatever. Otherwise, you're a laughingstock. And forever being. You're forever frustrated when you open a story and suddenly there's a great big advert that interrupts your reading of copy. So those guys who are doing that, it affects local media more possibly than nationals. It must be killing them. It must be. I mean, I can't believe people enjoy reading stuff where they don't know where they are in the story. Their papers, the pictures or adverts popping up all over the shop. But if it's a necessity, that's how they get their money to survive, then they have to do it. I think it's just something that will evolve. All the nationals have good websites. The Indie was the first one to drop its paper form and to go purely website. Yeah. Others may ultimately follow that model, I guess, at some point. But as I say, I hope not anytime soon.
Have you got any plans to set up your own YouTube channel?
I think this performance will probably prove that I shouldn't.
No, definitely not.
For the opposite.
Absolutely, yeah. Natural.
I don't. I think I would. I really enjoy doing the video stuff, the TV stuff. I think it's something that I never thought I would do when I joined the paper. It was never going to be something that was on the agenda really, but it's great fun, and the Sunday Supplement, whatever, is similar in many ways to that. But YouTube, I think I'm probably a bit too old for all that, to be fair.
Going back to press conferences and things like that, do you feel that some journalists rely too much on what pundits say to then ask players and managers like, Gary Neville said this, Graham Souness has said that? Do you feel that's
I don't think it's
an easy way out at times?
It can be. Look, if a press conference is going nowhere, that if you're not getting anything that's going to generate a story, then flinging a pundit's opinion, if it's someone relevant. I mean, if it's Gary Neville as a former England manager, maybe having a pop at, let's say, the England women's national team, who are managed by his brother, and that's quite interesting if he's having a go. I mean, I don't think it would happen, but I don't think journalists go unless it's something that's unbelievably high profile, as in and unbelievably outrageous. I don't think it happens that often. It might happen more in a broadcast. I mean, you have to bear in mind that the press conferences that you witness on club websites or even television, I guess. Yeah, Sky.
Oh, on Sky, yeah.
You're watching the broadcast press conference. You're not watching the newspaper's press conference. The newspaper journalists are sitting in that room waiting to have their own go. So a lot of the guys who might bring up the pundits, maybe that pundit has made those comments on their television channel and they're seeking a response from the man or the woman on the top table. Yeah. So there's a sort of vested interest in getting a response there. It would take something quite exceptional, as in a proper attack, verbal attack from a pundit, I think, to prompt a newspaper journalist to use the 10 minutes or so that we get as in an embargoed section after the broadcast press conference to respond to a pundit, because I think, not least because of the sort of inbuilt confidence, arrogance that we'd like to think we could generate our own stories with our own questions from that person, rather than reliant upon them reacting to something else.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your
Dom. Thanks so much.
time. It's been an absolute pleasure having you down.
Thanks for coming down.
No worries.
So thanks for watching this, guys. Please subscribe and comment below and like. Take care.